President Obama's ideas are deeply flawed, and the implementation of this law has been a national embarrassment. Let me be plain. The law that carries the president's name is the hallmark of a reckless federal government that has lost its way.
Ken Cuccinelli, Virginia's Attorney General and GOP candidate for governor, vowing to continue the effort to overturn Obamacare in the Republican weekly address. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Britt Hume, Fox News senior political analyst. Julie Pace, who covers the White House for the Associated Press. Syndicated columnist and Fox News contributor George Will. And Charles Lane of the Washington Post. Well, as we've been mentioning, there are two interesting developments on the Obamacare front this weekend. The federal government website is down again for repairs. You can see what people saw during the middle of the night if they went on to healthcare.gov. And it turns out that HHS Secretary Sebelius, who was declined to testify before a House committee this week on problems with the program, does have time to attend a gala, whatever, in Boston the night before. Britt, now that the shutdown is over and that is not soaking up all of the media attention, are all of the issues with Obamacare going to become a bigger issue?
Well, I think they've become more visible, although they were pretty visible, right, even despite the focus on the shutdown. I think it's probably good news that the system was down. It needs to be down for repairs. It may even need a complete redesign, which would set it back I don't know how many months. But the website is kind of the first hurdle. This program faces many hurdles. It's having a terrible time. It's clearly having a terrible time on this first hurdle. Then comes the question of how many people, when they see the prices and they see how much will be offset in certain cases by subsidies, how many people will think it makes sense to buy in? If you don't get to a certain critical mass, the system will not work. And they're nowhere near getting a sense of that yet. So this thing has a long way to go, plus the fact that an awful lot of people are being told your insurance that you now carry, which would qualify under Obamacare if you could still get it, canceled. So you have all of these possible victims out there, and we just don't know how many there are, but if there are enough, the system will fail.
Well, Julie, which brings us to your story, which we've been talking about today. She is the one who broke the story that what the government says 476,000 people have applied on the various websites. They didn't say how many have enrolled. A couple of questions. First of all, one, what's the difference between applying and enrolling, and how much does one tell you about the other? Secondly, as someone who covers the White House, how worried are they about what's going on here, the president and his top people? And is Secretary Sebelius in any trouble?
So I'll take your second question
God, you
first.
sound like Obama. Okay.
The administration, the White House in particular, very worried about this. They have spent a lot of time, a lot of money on this program, and you can't say that this rollout has been anything short of embarrassing for the president. He's going to come out on Monday. He's going to address these problems. It's the first time we'll really have seen him do that. I don't know how specific he's going to get, but this is sort of going to be a mea culpa from the president. In terms of
Secretary... You expect him really to say, we've messed up here?
I think he's going to have to. I think if he comes out and says anything other than that, he's just going to be ripped apart by the media, by the press, because this has really been a disastrous rollout. In terms of Secretary Sebelius, the administration says they have full confidence in her, that the president stands by her. I think they do have to think about the optics of this week, though. If she's going to be at a gala when she could be testifying before Congress, I think that just looks like they're not taking this as seriously as they should be.
And briefly, this question of applications and enrollment.
So applications, you have to fill out an application first when you get onto this website before you can actually enroll. This is where you enter your personal data. You also enter income information that helps the government figure out what kind of subsidy you could apply for, you could be qualified for. So it's important to know this number, but this number doesn't tell us how many people are actually going to enroll.
So before you can actually shop and look at plans,
correct.
You have to apply.
You have to apply and know if you can qualify for any of these plans. But
so you could apply and then sit there, and when you looked at it, go, no, I don't think
so. Absolutely. So we don't know if all of these people who have applied are going to eventually enroll. That's going to be the big number.
George, make sense of all this.
Well, I'm just guessing that the president is going to say this is George W. Bush's fault. Just a hunch. I don't know.
Or Mitt Romney's.
The problem from the start, going back to 2009 with the Affordable Care Act, is that as this debate began, a large majority of Americans had health care, and a large majority of that large majority were happy with their health care. Now they've devised a system that really depends at bottom on mass irrationality on the part of young people. That is, not content to subsidize the elderly as they're doing through Social Security and other things. They now have to pay more than they were paying and more than they would have to pay in the tax fee, whatever we call it, by not buying Obamacare. They have to pay more to subsidize the elderly, and once the exchanges are up and running and fully informing them, I think you're going to see sticker shock and a recoil against the Affordable Care Act.
And again, this only works, Obamacare only works if you get, what, about 2.7 million young, healthy people to sign up. And as George is suggesting, they pay their premium. They're not going to end up needing many services because they're young and healthy. And that money goes so that the insurance companies can afford to do things like handle people with pre-existing conditions. Otherwise, it's like pulling a thread and the whole thing falls apart. Which brings me to you, Charles. Under the individual mandate, people have to sign up by January 1st, actually December 15th, for the January 1st rollout, or they have to pay this fine, penalty, tax, not a great deal, at least in the start, $95. Do you think it's possible, if these problems continue, that the president would delay the individual mandate?
Well, you put your finger on what is both politically and in policy terms the fundamental problem here, which is you could confront a situation where people are potentially paying a tax for failing to sign up for something that was impossible to sign up for. And that is, I think, the definition of unfairness in the eyes of most Americans. And if you have a couple of hundred people talking to the media about being in that predicament, it is a disaster for the president. And he would face a decision to either continue the program anyway or to delay it, which is exactly what the Republicans were demanding he agreed to do during this whole last government shutdown. And so I think if he's not worried and he's not urgent about fixing this thing, he better be, because come early next year, he doesn't want to be in that predicament.
Think about that, Chris. If he had agreed to a one-year delay in the individual mandate, this whole worry about people not being able to sign up when the law requires them to do so would not be present, at least not now. And also, the government never would have had to shut down, because remember, one of the measures that was passed by the House was fully fund the government with a one-year delay in the individual mandate. And if it comes to pass anyway on his own motion, then the Republicans' posture in all of this might begin to look a little better, at least in terms of this shutdown. It looks pretty bad now, but it might look better then.
Of course, all this presumes...
Which I think means he'll be reluctant to do it. Right?
Well, and of course, all this presumes also that if they had another year that the system would work better, which I'm not sure you can, because they had 3 years and it still doesn't work.
Well, they'd be better off with a year's delay, though.